Um, so the chapter 13 or 12, I might have messed it up, and um, so it's set on Prospero, Lehman Russ's flagship, and then in the Battle of Prospero. So in Lehman Russ's flagship, it's the entire chapter, like all the chapters, House's perspective. So he sees Lehman Russ, Sisters of Silence. These are the females warriors accompanying him, and the Custodies, the Space Wolves, and the psyche of it, of the he's thinking in his head about the space, or not him, but the narrators, which is Hausa. But so Hausa's thinking in his head about uh, the Space Wolves have a lot greater number of Astartes than Thousand Suns, and it's going to be in a slightly advantaged fight, possible, and then there's the possibility for it to be even more advantaged because the Space Wolves have more numbers. They have the Custodies, they have the Sisters of Silence. Um, they and that's what's going for them. Then what's the disadvantage of the Thousand Suns bringing sorcery? That is very devastating. Um, and Houses given gifts. He's given better armor than when he went to the Quietude. He's given a las pistol, which has meaning for Hausa because it is a pistol of which is a place that has some sort of history that Hausa, makes meaning of. And he's in a Stormbird, and that's pretty much that scene. And then in the Stormbird, he's descending in a Stormbird with Hellwinter, Jorgrimder, Two Blade, his regular attachment. And some of the scenery is there's like mushroom clouds on the horizon. There's craters and canyons full of fire, and this is because of the bombs that were dropped from space onto the surface of Prospero. Um, and then so they're flying through the air with these smokes and fires into their first engagement with the Tower Guard, the Spire Guard. It's the native military of Prospero, and for lore nerds like me, and Prospero's a paradise of a civilization. Like it's just a paradise of a civilization, and these and houses as the Space Wolves are fighting these Tower Guard, Spire Guard. Hausa was thinking to himself about being more useful than on the Quietude. He doesn't want a protector who's putting themselves at risk, and he wants to be an active participant in the fight. And there's a descript, and then there's like a a long description of his first kill, that he killed a tower guard. He was first attacked by this individual with, las fire or something. There's a lot of named weaponry, which was interesting, which was fun to read, because there's something called a deflector shield, which deflected the shot at Hausa. He was uninjured by it, and then he returned fire and hit this spire guard 3 times, and that was that. I mean, it was a longer description, but that was it. I mean, describes the admiration he has for the spire guard, that even though they're mortals, they held the line until they were decimated. There was no retreat. They didn't give ground. They stopped the Space Wolves from advancing. And they're described as having kind of a ceremonial uniform costume. They have red plumes and crests for helmets. They have a bright red jacket, and some other things, but that was mostly what it was. It was quite a ceremonial looking thing, And the next scene in the chapter is when the Space Wolves, Hausa. This is Hausa narrating all the kills he's gotten. He's in total gotten 6 and one assist on a 1,000 Sons of Astartes. Jormungandr Two-Blade had gotten speared through by this 1,000 Sons, and Hausa assisted in defeating this 1,000 Son by running and jumping a jump swing with his axe into the helmet of this 1,000 Sons. His helmet thwarted, cushioned the blow. He wasn't injured by it, but it distracted him. And then Jormungandr Two-Blade could use that opportunity to free himself from being pinned by the spear. Not take it out, but the guy no longer was putting his weight on it, and which was the described technique of, he was putting his weight on it so that, the pain was preventing Two-Blade from doing any sort of reaction. And then so Hausa's just standing there to the giant, just screwed. But that gave Jormungandr Two-Blade the opportunity to, attack the 1,000 Sons and defeat him. And then the next scene is no more, like, that was the end of Hausa narrating, to himself about, the kills he's participated in. And then the next scene is pretty much the first time his group of Space Wolves encounter 1,000 Sons. So these 2 battle lines are coming to each other, and the 1,000 Sons use sorcery. So there was a lot of devastation to this Space Wolves group, and there was lots of descriptions on, Space Wolves were just burning up in a fire. Space Wolves looked like they had been sliced in half. Space Wolves looking like they had been hit with concussive force or had just melted. And I'll have some commentary a bit because no, I don't know. I thought that was anyway. Um, and so the space wolves then return fire, descriptions of missiles and bolt shells and so much so much projectiles just going through the view, um, and hitting Thousand Suns and Space Wolves getting in close for melee fights. And they're reinforced by Custodes and Sisters of Silence that they eventually win this confrontation with this A Thousand Suns group. And then the scene that's kind of the end of the action of the chapter, because after that description narration, it's just Hausa taking refuge in some chapel, and that's the end of that chapter. I'll just throw in the commentary now that the I can see why there's a lot of dislike for Thousand Suns, both in the fiction world and in real life. That uh it's just a sense of unfairness and resentment that these aren't the same rules, and it's hard in the sort of just the sort of challenges and obstacles that gives other characters when you're not having to play by different rules.